Welcome to the Patriots Draft Countdown presented by Bud Light. Easy to drink, easy to enjoy. Bud Light, the official beer sponsor of the New England Patriots. I'm Matt Smith, joined with Evan Lazar.
Hello.
It's the 40th year at the Combine for the NFL here in Indianapolis. Evan, set the scene for us as we're here.
Yeah, today I thought was a really good kickoff to the week here with Elliot Wolf talking to us this morning. And I think at this point in the Combine, there's a lot of conversations that are going on, behind the scenes that we don't necessarily see. And then as we get into Wednesday and Thursday, the prospects start to arrive, and then it kind of shifts more to the interviews, the medicals, the things that go on at Lucas Oil Stadium later on in the week. But for these couple of days, it's kind of just like a summit of all the decision makers in the NFL are in one place, kind of waiting around until the real action starts. And it's a lot of deals get made at this time of the year.
As Evan mentioned, Elliot Wolf met with the media today here at the Convention Center in Indianapolis. And after that meeting with the press, Elliot joined us for this podcast. Here's the conversation. And we're pleased to be joined by Executive Vice President of Player Personnel, Elliot Wolf, Matt Smith, along with Evan Lazar. Thanks for joining us, Elliot.
Thanks for having me.
Not your traditional travel setup to get to Indianapolis. It needs a breeze to get to, except for maybe this year.
No, I feel bad too because I was kind of talking tough to my wife the day that there's a storm coming. Like, don't worry, I'll just go a day later. And then it ended up being we left a day and a half early, 6 a.m. flight, and flew to Detroit and 5-hour drive down. And I'm glad you guys made it too.
Yeah, there's always a tough conversation with the missus when you're like, we're gonna have to add an extra full day onto this. But when I saw you there, I was like, all right, we're all in the same boat, so I have no excuse. I'm going to make the drive. But I wanted to ask you, just for you personally, I remember sitting here with you a year ago and not coming off a trip to the Super Bowl like we are this year. Just how gratifying has this turnaround and this success been for you just on an individual level?
I think it's been, obviously tremendously gratifying. I think it's really cool that, when Mike and I kind of joined forces, so to speak, and the coaching staff and the scouting staff and everybody working together, the fact that we were going to get it flipped became pretty apparent pretty quickly. The fact that we did it so quickly is really cool, and now it's incumbent upon us to try to keep it going.
So you mentioned the quickly part, Elliot. I think the fans think, or maybe conventional wisdom suggests, they're Super Bowl, they're 5 weeks behind. That's really not the case. Like, this is an ongoing process for you and your staff.
Right. Yeah, it's an ongoing process. Really the only thing that we've had to adjust somewhat was the draft meetings, which normally would start a week before the Super Bowl. We flew home from the Super Bowl on Monday and started at 7 a.m. on Tuesday and, got everything done that we needed to. So other than that, the planning, we know who the free agents are going to be. Like, the planning and all the things on the pro side are pretty similar.
You mentioned keeping it going, and I was just wondering, does it change your sort of approach at all that you guys made the Super Bowl last year versus it kind of just only being year two? I know Coach Vrabel keeps saying 307 days, you know. Does it change the offseason that you guys had so much success last year, maybe a little bit ahead of schedule here?
I don't think so. I think we have to do what's necessary to improve the roster, whether that's free agency, draft, trades, waiver claims, you name it. We're going to be very intentional and continue to bring in the right kind of people and the right kind of players to help support our team.
You also mentioned at the podium the edge class, maybe a potential need there. Where else do you kind of see needs on the roster? Yeah,
I just think increasing the depth throughout. Obviously we could use more playmakers, and everyone's pretty aware that the offensive line maybe didn't finish the way that we would have hoped. So again, not only those, but really just kind of looking all throughout the roster at areas that we can improve. And if there's a player that's out there that we think can help us, we're going to explore acquiring them.
I want to follow up on something that you also said at the podium. That maybe this is just a me thing. I don't know that you bristled, but it's that whole, it's not a really good draft this year. This is a down year or anything like that. Like, it seems like it's kind of a lazy analysis when people say that. That must offend you maybe in some sort of way.
It doesn't offend me. I just feel like I hear it every year.
Right.
When this is just what it is.
Right.
Like, we have to operate, with the players that are available. And, is NIL changing things as far as guys staying in school? Yeah, absolutely. But there's still players. There's still 7 rounds. We still have 11 picks, and we're gonna try to get a good player with all those picks. So, I think it would be making an excuse. Well, if you look back on the draft 2 years from now and say, oh, well, we didn't get any good players because the draft was bad. I think you're lying to yourself.
Sticking with the draft, what are the differences between picking 3, picking 4, now we're picking 31? And does that kind of increase just the amount of players you might have to look at for that pick, because it's not just 2 or 3 guys that are going to go ahead of you guys?
I mean, theoretically, yes, it would increase the amount of players that you would be available to be picked. But, when you're picking at 4, you're also picking at, 36 or whatever. So you're still looking at all those players anyway. So it doesn't really change anything from that standpoint. It's just tougher to predict who's going in front of you.
Yeah. How do you guys do you guys run your own simulations? Like, how do you go about figuring out the first 30?
Yeah, I would say, starting at the Senior Bowl and the Combine's kind of the big one, and then into pro days, like the draft industry and the draft machine's really moving. And, you can get information. There's nuggets of information out there, and there's a lot of nuggets of misinformation out there too. But you can sort of kind of start to paint a picture of understanding where guys are going to go, and you can have a good feel for, who potentially could be there at any pick.
You've got a guy who is under contract. I know there's not players that you could talk about specifically, but Christian Gonzalez is under contract. There's an opportunity probably to revisit and say, well, let's see if we can extend this. Is that a hope of the organization to see if you can come to some sort of agreement with Christian and keep him here in New England as long as possible?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we love Christian, and we'll talk about those things when the time is appropriate. But Christian took a big step forward this year. Not that, he went from here to here. Like he took a big step forward with his play style, and we're excited about having him be a part of our team, for the long term.
You mentioned, taking a big step. You also said something about the draft industry, and that's why everybody's really here in Indianapolis. But, Elliot, it's draft and develop, isn't it? Like, you had a lot of guys who pitched a lot of innings this year who were rookies, who played a lot of snaps.
We did.
It's important to see those guys take the next step, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I feel like in this world of instant gratification, it's easy to forget that Will Campbell's 22 and Drake May's 23. I mean, these guys are still developing, even though they've had a tremendous amount of success already. So I think it's a credit to our coaching staff that we were able to play so many rookies. Those guys kind of poured their time and effort into these guys, and got them out there, and they were able to be productive for us.
Speaking of the rookies, and just with Craig Woodson as a guy that, you guys drafted him in the 4th round. I remember on our draft shows, people said you took him too high. Like, it was a little bit of a reach. He ends up being this great player for you guys. How do you find the Craig Woodsons? Because we all know the Will Campbells and the Drake Mays, but how do you go find those guys?
Yeah, I mean, Craig was an interesting one because, like, almost universally, maybe not almost, like universally in our organization, like, everyone really liked him. Everyone thought he was good. The area scout, the national scout, the college director, the over-the-top scouts, the personnel executive, the analytics liked him. Vrabel liked him. The defensive coaches liked him. Like, it was an easy one, and we got him later than where we had him rated. And we're excited that he was able to get, again, you still get a guy in the 4th round at a position on the defense that's all about communication and helping people around you and getting guys lined up. And for a 4th round rookie, those things can be challenging. Or any rookie, those things can be challenging, and he was able to answer that, and we would expect him to continue to develop and get even better.
Is that kind of the perfect storm of everything going right? And if that's that's the goal. You're all on the same page. Everybody wants the guy. You can get the guy, and then he performs for you right
Absolutely.
Out of the chute. That's what you're looking for, right?
That's what you're looking for, and that probably doesn't happen that often. So, that was a cool one. And the draft in a lot of ways, not only Craig, but some of the other players that we were able to draft, it kind of fell to us in the right way. It, as our board was set up and some of the needs that we had, it fell well. And, there's no telling when that's going to happen. It doesn't happen that way every year. So, it was kind of a perfect storm of good fortune, I guess.
You mentioned the offensive line earlier, and I know there's a lot of talk about Will and his position, leaving him at left tackle, it sounds like. What about Jared, though? Like, where do you guys kind of see him long term? I know he played center at college. Sure. Like, do you kind of see him in more as a center or guard? What do you kind of think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think he can play either position. He's another guy that came in young. He'd never really played guard before and was thrust into that position. It was one of our best 5 and, played very well for the majority of the season. But he's also really smart, so he can handle the calls and the checks at center. So I think that kind of remains to be seen as we continue to build this thing out.
The other thing that you mentioned, and then we'll wrap it up here for you, with Gonzo, you mentioned his play demeanor. and I know effort and finish is a non-negotiable
Sure.
for coach, but how do you kind of, get that out of players? Because I think that was something that we all see that he's capable of, and then Coach Vrabel mentioned, maybe Baltimore game, somewhere around there, that flip switch. When did you kind of see that play demeanor change from him?
So I want to be clear, like I've always been very positive on Christian's play demeanor. I just thought he took it to a different level.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was Baltimore. I think it was maybe before that. But he started to understand different ways that, look, if they're not going to throw at him, like he started to understand that he can impact the game in other ways. And I think you saw that, with some of the forced fumbles and the tackling on the edge and, even just chasing plays down from the backside. So, he's really gifted. And I think because of those gifts, sometimes he's held to a higher standard. Maybe that's the right thing to do. But he was able to really improve throughout the course of the season. Yeah,
he's definitely one of those guys where he's so talented that sometimes it doesn't look like he's trying, but you just know that he's just like gliding out there.
Yeah, I go back to the first practice of it wasn't rookie, it was veteran minicamp when the vets had come in and they were just doing individual drills with the defensive backs. And, he's this first rounder that everyone knows is talented. But when it was his turn, even like Jonathan Jones and the other vets were watching him. Oh. Because he moves so impressively for a guy that's 6'1.5", 210 pounds. Like it's incredibly impressive to watch him move.
I remember his combine workout here, and we play that clip around this time every year, and it goes viral because his workout here was the same thing. I mean, it was just unbelievable.
Elliot, thank you very much for your time.
Yeah,
Appreciate
thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you. I thought there was a couple of really interesting nuggets in there with Elliot. I thought the Woodson story that he told about and how the perfect storm met with everybody in the organization from a personnel standpoint, that it just sort of clicked. I found that really fascinating.
Yeah, and like I said to him in the interview, I remember doing our draft show in the moment, and frankly, Craig Woodson was rated a lot lower than where they picked him in the 4th round, and it just looks like it was a great scout by the Patriots because he was one of their best players in the playoff run, certainly, and got better and better as the season wore on. And like I said to Elliot during the interview, it's one thing to be able to identify Will Campbell and Drake May and Christian Gonzalez in the 1st round, but the really good scouting departments are finding Craig Woodson's, right? Like those are the guys that are the diamonds in the rough. The Patriots hit on one of those players last year with him. A couple of the other things that I thought stood out just from all the different media availability that he did, not just with us. I think the conversation of like where are the Patriots in their build is important because let's face it, they were a little ahead of schedule last year being in the Super Bowl as quickly as they were in 307 days into Mike Vrabel's regime, like he likes to say. And Elliot Wolf said that the only thing that changes from his perspective is that they are now a destination for free agents. And free agents that want to play in a winning culture, that want to play for Mike Vrabel, that want to play with Drake May, that might allow them to do a little bit more than what they've been able to do. But it did kind of seem like he was acknowledging that they're still in a build phase. Like, this is not a done, finished product just yet.
No question about it. I thought that was clear what he said. What also struck me about that, those things that he said it with an air of confidence about him.
Yeah.
There wasn't a cockiness about him, but, yep, this is what we're doing. This is where our program is. We still have needs. This is going to be a place to attract free agents, and here's what we're going to do. And I thought the way he said it really struck me.
Yeah, and then the couple of positions that he pointed to in terms of needs and where they would like to hit. Edge rusher came right out immediately at the podium earlier today, and he mentioned edge rusher, and then I was able to ask him, like, what kinds of edge rushers are you going to be looking for? And the very first thing that he said was pass rush ability. And it just kind of juxtapositions, everybody has a different flavor of types of players that they want. He didn't say much about run defense, right? It seems like they want their edge rushers to get up the field, to get off the ball, to be speed rushers off the edge, have arsenals of pass rush moves, like we saw with Harold Landry, like we saw with Caleb Von Chason. Like, those are their guys. I don't think that we're going to get necessarily the sturdy, set the edge, stop the run type of guy. I think they really do want more of that finesse pass rush type of player. He mentioned playmakers. He kind of put that into one bucket between wide receiver and tight end. Offensive line was the other one. And, those three, I think we're all kind of assuming that those will be the ones that they'll hit.
So a really interesting Patriot-centric conversation with Elliot Wolf earlier today. Now, if you want to get into the prospects, and it's somebody who really knows ball, besides Evan had a very interesting conversation with the Athletics' Dane Brugler. Here it is.
We are joined now by Dane Brugler from The Athletic. He doesn't need an introduction, though. The beast himself. Dane, it's your time to shine, buddy. This is your time of year. How is everything going with the draft prep, the beasts, all of that? This must be your favorite time of year.
It really is, especially the Combine. It feels like because the season, the Super Bowl, I mean, I know you guys were busy the last month or so.
Yeah.
But finally, everybody has turned the page, and we're all focused on the draft now. So I've been wanting to talk draft with people in October, and, some people will, but now it's like everybody wants to kind of turn the page to the draft, and that makes it a lot of fun.
So we were talking draft in October in New England the last 2 years. We are not doing that this year. And everybody keeps asking me, what do you want to ask Dane? And I said, for help, because we are 5 weeks behind everybody else. So just tell our listeners, our viewers, just what are some of your high-level thoughts on this draft class, positions that are strengths, things of that nature.
I think it matches up fairly well with where we think the Patriots could be looking. Edge rusher, wide receiver, two strongest positions in this draft. In my top 100, I had 17 receivers, 16 edge rushers, and they're all a little bit different with what they offer. And so I think, especially for this team, it could be interesting the type of edge rusher they want to attack. We think of Mike Vrabel, and I think it'd be fair to assume he wants that big edge setter and somebody that is going to hold up versus the run and the toughness and all of that. But also, I think he appreciates if you can bring the juice off the edge, he'll compromise a little bit with what you bring in the run game if you have that speed and can get to the quarterback. So I think that this draft has a little bit of both. And so I don't think that we can zero in exactly on maybe the edge rusher that the Patriots could be targeting at 31 or late second, but I think it gives them options.
Yeah, I want to come back to edge rusher, but you mentioned 31. Let's just start there. Who or what, do you kind of see in the range there? I know.
What a difference. Last year was 4. And
I'm telling you, man. We had 3 guys to go in front of the Patriots last year, 2 guys the year before.
Mm-hmm.
I knew, and not that I knew any inside information, but I knew they were taking Drake May and Will Campbell for probably 6 months.
Right.
This is a completely different animal this time.
And that's the thing is we don't know how those first 30 picks are going to play out. And so, you can set your board, but, you're going to be sitting on pins and needles waiting to see who's going to fall to you. And it makes it tougher to project doing a mock draft and thinking about, how you're going to plan out, okay, we want to do this in the first round, and then hopefully in the second round we'll come back and do this. And it's just a lot more waiting around and being patient to let the board fall to you. I don't think they're going to be moving around all that much. You want to keep those picks. But it does make it a little more interesting this year.
All right, let's go back to the edge rushers because trying to figure out who they're going to take at 31 is a little bit of a needle in a haystack that I'm not used to be honest with you. Edge rushers, we just talked to Elliot Wolf, the Patriots personnel chief, and he mentioned what you were kind of saying. Pass rush ability is really what they look for first. First step explosiveness, pass rush ability, multiple moves in their arsenal. When you hear that description, who are some guys that come to mind?
Yeah, I think that especially with where they're going to be picking, late first round, you think about an R. Mason Thomas from Oklahoma. He's a little bit undersized, but you want that juice. Will Campbell knows who R. Mason Thomas is. Will Campbell gave up 2 sacks in his career at LSU, his entire career. One of those was R. Mason Thomas. And I think that you're sacrificing a little bit of the size and the ability to set an edge, but if he's going to bring you that edge juice and going to threaten the quarterback and put pressure on what they're doing, that's the value. And so, but again, that's why, picking late first round, you have to compromise in some areas. There's a reason these guys are still going to be on the board at that point in the draft. So you have to compromise in some way, and the Patriots need to decide, okay, where are we willing to compromise? Is it speed? Is it size? If they want someone with more size, guys than maybe a Zion Young from Missouri, who big, physical, has length. He'll go through you. He'll set a firm edge. He can rake out the ball, create turnovers. So T.J. Parker from Clemson will always also fall in that group. So I think it just depends on the type of edge rusher they want to target and who they think can best impact. Because part of it will depend on what they do this offseason. K'Lavon Chaisson, is he still on this team?
Right.
What do they look to address in free agency? So that will depend on the direction or the type of pass rusher maybe they target here in the draft.
Yeah, those are two good ones. R. Mason Thomas is someone that jumped off to me just in my initial study of the edges because of that first step, and you look at guys like Chaisson, guys like Harold Landry, it's kind of in that similar mold. You mentioned Young. He's been mocked to the Patriots. I've seen a decent amount. What have you heard about some of the off-field stuff with him, though? Because doesn't he have a little bit of a pass that I'm sure will be in the beast? Right,
and he was at Michigan State before, and that he was part of that incident, in the tunnel with Michigan way back when. But I don't think that. Like, you talk to the Missouri coaches, you talk to scouts, I don't think that they are, this is a red flag player. This is someone that we need to really do our extra homework on. They'll do the due diligence and make sure they're comfortable with the person, but I don't think it's a huge worry with, his background and someone that, you feel like you're bringing in a questionable player into your locker room, your community. I don't think it's that type of situation with Zion Young.
Okay, good to hear. And we'll go to wide receiver next. There's one player in particular I want to ask you about, but just what did you think about this class as a whole?
It's a good group, and it's kind of like edge rusher, ice cream flavors, right? And they're all good, but do you like vanilla? Do you like chocolate? It just depends what you're looking for at that time. And the Patriots are interesting because are they going to want the true X on the outside? Right. Are they going to want maybe someone that's more versatile and can play the slot, can also play the Z? I think that there's different ways they could attack it, which could depend. Does that mean that they want to go with Denzel Boston from Washington? Does that mean they want to go Casey Concepcion, Omar Cooper from Indiana? And if they wait till the second, third round, there's other options, smaller guys like a Brendan Thompson from Mississippi State, who my pick for the fastest 40 this week. A big fan of Ted Hurst from Georgia State, who big, can win down the field. He has more catches at 20-plus yards the last 2 years than anybody else in college football. So I think that like edge rusher, it's like, okay, this is how our offense is looking. Do we want to drop in a run after catch slot? Do we want to, you feel like you already have that with Douglas. Do you want to get a true X on the outside? Does that feel like that's our biggest need? So I think it's interesting the different ways they could attack it.
Yeah, 100%. Obviously a lot also probably rides on what they end up doing with Stephon Diggs, and is he part of their long-term plans? But we've always seen that sort of Z slot role in a Josh McDaniels offense thrive, and Diggs was kind of in that role last year and had another 1,000-yard season. But then you look at Drake May, and he's the type of guy that wants to throw the ball down the field, especially on the outside the numbers.
No question.
And the one guy that I just really got infatuated with really quickly was Chris Brazzell from Tennessee.
Sure.
And it just seems to me like there's just not that many guys on the planet that are 6'5" that run that well. And what really sold me on him is how he catches the football at the catch point too. It's not just he's got great speed. He's also got that contested catch ability. Talk to me a little bit about him. And he transferred, correct?
Tulane.
Yep. Yeah, he played a little bit more diverse offense maybe at Tulane, because that Tennessee offense always freaks me out a little bit.
The track record of Tennessee receivers from that offense isn't great, and part of it is just the route tree there has to run and how much of a transition it is to an NFL offense. But it's easy to see why teams are going to be interested in Brazzell because of how explosive he is in a straight line, but also he can snap off routes, he can create his own separation, and then he will track the ball really well, bring it into his away from his body. And you mentioned the catch radius, like it's there. So he is tall, very lean. So maybe you worry about the play strength concerns at times. Just expanding his route tree. Anyone coming from that offense, you're going to worry about that to some degree. But he's a good player. He is a good player, and I think once you get to day 2, he's immediately in that mix, in that conversation of, okay, this is one of the guys on our short list of a direction we could go.
All right, 2 more positions, and I'll let you go. The other one that I think a lot of Patriots fans are looking at is tight end, because Hunter Henry's 31, 32 years old. Austin Hooper's a free agent. Sort of that next wave. all the things that I've seen on the tight ends is that it's Sadiq at the top, and then it's like a big gap, and then there's a cluster there like in the middle rounds. Is that how you see it as well, and who are some of the guys that stand out?
Yeah, that's how I see it. Sadiq should be a first-round pick, and then I think Eli Stowers from Vanderbilt, Max Clare, Ohio State. Those guys are second-round guys. But I think the meat of this draft, why it is so deep, we're talking 4th round, 5th round. Those guys, it's a deep group of tight ends. There are 27 tight ends invited to the combine this year. The average is like 19. So, and let's remember, the NFL teams are the guy. That's who votes who gets to the combine, who gets an invite. So obviously, part of it is just this class and how deep it is. Part of it is teams are really interested in the tight end position as a whole, and so there's a lot of guys they want to see. Will Kaczmarek from Ohio State is on that short list of guys that if I'm going to wait till, say, the 4th round and target somebody, that's somebody that I'd be looking at. And you think about a guy that when he's targeted, he'll make plays. He didn't have a single drop in 2 years at Ohio State, but his value as a blocker, he will try to run through guys, bury them into the ground. He holds up in pass protection. So Kaczmarek makes sense. I like Nate Borkicker from Texas A&M. He'd be in there. So there are 4 or 5 tight ends I'd be circling if I get to day 3, hadn't drafted the position yet, but feel like there's somebody that, okay, I want to make sure I come away with from day 3 with one of these guys.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned the blocking ability, and I think that's one area where the Patriots tight ends were maybe a little deficient in. You know, Hunter Henry had a great year, top 10 in pretty much all receiving categories among tight ends. How rare is it, though, now to have that well-rounded guy? Because it doesn't feel like every time I look at a guy, it's like, well, he's a great receiver, but he's not a great blocker. But this guy's a blocking specialist, but he doesn't catch the ball. And it's kind of hard to get the full package.
The NFL is all about mismatches, right? If we're just going to boil it down in the most simplistic terms, it's about finding those mismatches, exploiting them. Or if you're on defense, making sure, we talk so much about Nick Emmanwori and what he meant for Seattle this year. He was mismatch proof because he on the field he can cover, he can play the run, he can be a linebacker if you need him to, whatever. On offense, you're looking for those advantages. How can you get a mismatch? And so in certain personnel packages, it's an immediate trigger for teams like, oh, okay, well, they're in 13 personnel. Okay, that means it's a run. It means it's this. But if you have more of a versatile tight end room, you can do different things where, okay, 12 personnel, 13 personnel, you are, it's not necessarily a run player. You're not necessarily running a certain passing concept. You are doing different things. And so I do think, you think about Jackson Hawes and what he meant for Buffalo last year. There are those types of tight ends in this year's class where a 4th round, 5th round, like I mentioned, Will Kaczmarek, Borkicker, those are the guys that are going to give you really good blocking, but they also can help you out in the passing game as well.
Awesome. And the last position, obviously the offensive line. And the Patriots have all been consistent, whether it's Coach Vrabel or Elliot Wolf, that Will Campbell's staying at left tackle. And they're not going to move him. But I look at left guard, because Jared Wilson, probably more a natural center, moving him back to center long term. There are a couple guys in that 1st round range, the kid from Oregon, for example, that, are pure left guard prospects. What do you see in this guard class here in the draft?
It's not a bad group at all. I think we're going to see Vega Ioane from Penn State go early. He'll be off the board.
That guy's incredible.
One of the best players in the draft, hands down. I think he's going to be someone top 15, no questions asked. Guards aren't sexy to draft early, but everyone needs them, and I think he's the best this draft has to offer. Chase Besantis from Texas A&M, I think he's the 2nd best guard. Young player, but man, you're excited about who he is now, but also where he's headed. I think Billy Schrauth from Notre Dame, I really like him, and I think in the 3rd round, that'd be someone that I would love to target if I'm looking for someone I can plug in at the guard position, and he's gonna, I feel like, compete right away for a starting job. Now he's missed at least 4 games each of the last 2 years with injury. That's why you're getting a little bit of a discount on him, but he's going to start games in his future. He has that type of ability. So there are some players, Emmanuel Pregnon from Oregon you mentioned. Yeah. So I think day 2, if you're looking to come away with the guard, which I like that idea. I like the idea of moving Wilson inside. I think that's what is best for him and best for just getting the best 5 out there. I do think that is a sound strategy to come away maybe 3rd round with a Billy Schrauth and feel like, okay, our offensive line is immediately defensively stronger with this addition.
In terms of tackles, the one spot too, just Morgan Moses, 35 years old on the right side. There are some guys in that late first round range. I don't know if they would want to redshirt a guy this early on in their build, with Vrabel. But how's the depth of the tackle class? Let's say they wanted to get a developmental guy, somewhere on late day 2, early day 3.
I think that's it's possible. I think it's threading the needle a little bit just because it's not a super deep group. And all 32 teams are looking for that, right? All 32 teams are looking for offensive line help in some form or fashion. If they do look at the position late first round, Blake Miller is really interesting at that point. And you think of a Vrabel guy, I think of Blake Miller. I mean, I think of he literally missed one practice in 4 years at Clemson. He just does not miss time.
I saw that note and I was like, got to write this guy's name down.
There's a lot that I think translates to what this team wants to be.
Absolutely.
And so if you have Will Campbell on the left side, Miller on the right side, and that's kind of your bookends for the next 10 years, I think you're feeling pretty good about that. Even if it's not the most immediate need right now, this is a team that they're looking at, 2026. They're looking at the 2027 roster. They're looking at the 2028 roster. They're going to do what's best for this team long term. Well,
that's why we had him on, because I was just taking mental notes of all the names he just mentioned. You got a target date for the Beast yet? When's he coming?
Early April is always the goal. We got a lot to do this week, and then I go back in my hole in the month of March to get it done, and then hopefully early April it's ready, and people can dive in and have it by their side every step of the way.
Well, there's nobody better than Dane Brugler on the draft. The Beast is an invaluable tool that I always look at right before the draft as well, and add all your little notes, data bursts, and all the things that the coaches and scouts are saying about these guys. So give Dane a follow. Make sure you subscribe to The Athletic and read his stuff. He's the best. Dane, it's becoming a yearly tradition. I love it. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, can't wait. Thanks.
Really good analysis there by Dane Brugler about the draft. And here's another guy who really knows the draft well. Another conversation Evan had with ESPN's Jordan Reid.
All right, we're joined now by Jordan Reid from ESPN, a yearly tradition of you coming down to the table, which I really appreciate, Jordan. One of the best draft analysts in the business. How you doing? It's good to see you.
I'm good. I'm just hoping you guys have caught your breath after a long season.
Yeah, I know. I feel like we're, the chest out a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Like we didn't finish the job, but we were pretty close.
Right.
So it's very exciting. But now that we turn the page to the draft, very, very different draft scenario for the Patriots. What do you kind of see as some of the players that they could possibly target? It's a very wide casted net at 31. It could be a bunch of different kind of permutations here, but what do you kind of see as sort of the strengths of the draft that might make it all the way to 31?
I think there's a lot of depth in this year's defensive class. Honestly, I look at positions like defensive end. I think there's a lot of depth, which I think is an area that the Patriots need a lot of help at. DB, I think this is an exceptional corner class, and then also safety, but also linebacker as well. So any defensive position, honestly, I think there's a lot of depth to be had.
Yeah, I want to stick on the defensive side of the ball because, offensive line, wide receiver, that's going to dominate the headlines for Patriots fans and media. But when we talked to Elliot Wolf earlier today, it was very clear that there were some defensive needs on that side of the ball that he has on his mind as well. Let's start with the safeties because there's two guys, McNeil Warren from Toledo, right, and Dylan Thieneman from Oregon, that I liked both those guys' tapes a lot, but they're very different types of safeties. What do you see out of those two players, and what makes them so different, I guess?
I'll start with Thieneman. He's somebody that coming over from Purdue, when he was at Purdue, he strictly played at free safety. Like you're seeing him 15 to 20 yards away from the ball, and he is what I like to call a mistake eraser on the back end. He was just playing sideline to sideline, really trying to keep everything in front of him, but also when those DBs got beat on the back end, he was just erasing everything. At 6 interceptions his final year there at Purdue, and then he transitions to Oregon, and they changed his role quite a bit. He's playing all over the place. You see him playing nickel. He's playing strong safety. He's playing that middle hole, middle wrap player, but also some free safety as well. And, the area that he cleaned up the most was his tackling. I thought he really struggled tackling his final season at Purdue, and it mainly was because he was coming from so high from the roof that he would miss time. A lot of things, had some bad angles and took some bad pursuit areas as well. So he really cleaned that up. With McNeil Warren, they utilized him quite a bit, more so at that strong safety spot. He does have some shades of playing at free safety as well, but I think he can be interchangeable. But his hitting power, man, he comes down and he'll thump you. I think that's the area where he's a little bit more polished than Thieneman. But with him, I think he's going to be a huge tester as well, and I don't even know if he's going to be on the board for the Patriots. But very different stylistically, but definitely first-round worthy players.
So with McNeil Warren, I've heard some Nick Amon-Mori type comps and buzz. Yep. Do you see them as similar players? We always obviously just learned a lot, unfortunately, about Nick Amon-Mori in the Super Bowl, so a familiar player. And it's a type of safety that I'm not sure the Patriots system currently is going to prioritize, but it's also something that they don't really have. Like, they kind of have the Craig Woodsons of the world that can play deep, but they don't necessarily have that, like, big nickel. Is that how you see him kind of projecting to the pros?
I think primarily that's where he has to play, but I don't think you have to limit him to being that. So let's say 75-35 as far as the splits, just because he does have some really good plays of playing split safety, but also being that single guy high on the roof as well. So I think he's more so interchangeable, but I think you're spot on as far as where you primarily want him to play, which is that big nickel role, that sniffer is what I like to call it, where he can make those plays around the line of scrimmage. But I feel really good about him matching up with those tight ends in the slot, especially when teams go to those 12, 13 personnel, which is where you have to have those bigger guys that not only can be consistent as far as in pass coverage, but also they have to bring some physicality to the table against the run as well.
So going to linebacker, that's another need that Elliot Wolf kind of echoed today. You know, Robert Spillane, Christian Ellis, good players that the Patriots are going to have back, but getting younger, getting some depth there. Who do you like in that, like, day 2 range at linebacker, maybe early day 3? That's not at 31 necessarily, but a little bit deeper.
I have a huge cluster of those guys right now, man. I mean, you talk about Anthony Hill Jr. at Texas. He's that big, athletic spark plug that is a little bit more comfortable playing downhill right now just because he's so aggressive. He's one. One I absolutely love is Jake Golday out of Cincinnati. He's that big physical guy. It was kind of weird how they used him just because he's playing like outside at nickel and then a transition to Will, and now he'll have some shades of Mike as well. I think he's more comfortable on the weak side. I think that's what he's going to be on the next level. And then one guy that's really gotten a lot of steam here over the past few weeks, very young redshirt sophomore, Josiah Trotter out of Mizzou. Very similar to Anthony Hill as far as run defense, aggressive downhill, needs to clean up some things in pass coverage, but I could see him jumping some guys in that second tier that we talked about.
Okay, so we did the defense. That's the nuts and bolts. We got to talk about some wide receivers and playmakers, though, because that's going to
talk about the pretty guys,
all right,
pretty boys,
that's
right?
what moves the needle, right? I know you always give us like 1 or 2 good wide receiver sleepers every year. So what do you got for us this year?
So one that I like quite a bit is Kevin Coleman, the wide receiver out of Mizzou. And if you remember, going back to the Senior Bowl, nobody could guard that guy, man. He was absolutely phenomenal. Well-traveled, started off his career at Jackson State, then shifted to Mississippi State before ending his career at Missouri. Had a big breakout year last season. I think he's going to be a serviceable wide receiver 3 that's going to give you a lot on special teams. So if you're looking for somebody that can fill out your wide receiver core, I definitely think he is one. Another, if you're looking for that vertical guy, is Bryce Lance out of North Dakota State. He's somebody that we haven't seen at all during the All-Star game circuit, so he's kind of getting lost in that shuffle of these big X receivers, and I think there's a huge cluster of them right now. Ted Hurst at Georgia State, Chris Brazzell at Tennessee, Malachi Fields at Notre Dame. So there's this huge cluster of these big X receivers that can run vertical.
Yeah, I just Brazzell caught my eye because when you start to look at Drake May, 6'5", downfield receiver, really seems to fit that bill. Where are you at with Denzel Boston? Because that's one player, obviously first rounder probably, but I see like wild swings of where in the first round people have him going.
It's just because the prototype that we've seen like that hasn't translated well in the NFL, but I think he's much different than some of the guys that we have seen in years past because I think he's underrated as a separator, but how they used him at Washington was just how they ran him vertically. But when you see him separate in the short to intermediate areas, I definitely think he's very good in that facet, but his hand strength, man, like he catches everything that's in his vicinity. Yeah. He had some great catches against Washington State this year of where you're able to see a lot of hand strength and body control with him.
Yeah, like I've heard a couple Keon Coleman comps. I think he moves different from Keon Coleman.
question. I would agree.
Yeah, and that Washington State film, he had that little stutter and go and toe tap on the sidelines. Like, that's also a Drake May receiver right there. Well, that's why we had Jordan Reid on, because as you can tell, he's an encyclopedia where it comes to this kind of stuff. You can find him on ESPN doing all their draft coverage as well. Jordan, thanks for joining us.
Thanks as always, Evan.
Good stuff there from Jordan. It's been really a lot of great information today. Elliot,
yes.
Dane, Jordan. You want to stay tuned to the Patriots Draft Countdown presented by Bud Light, because we're going to have more guests this week from Indianapolis. For Evan Lazar, I'm Matt Smith. More content coming your way from the Combine.